Raynette,
They're only favorite things.
and whoever. Yeah. And we should be, so let's get it.
Good morning. Welcome to budget hearing for Citizen Review Board. I'm joined by my fellow councilors, Councilor Hogan, Manto, Peniawa, Madam President. Yours are truly Chomajo, Councilor Allen, Councilor Choles, and of course our amazing staff, City Clerk, and our legislative aide, Jimmy, and of course members of the CRB, City Auditor. Welcome. We are going to first start by just handing it to Ray. Ray, good to see you.
Thank you.
Give us an overview and just run us through, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. First, I would like to take the opportunity to thank the council for their presence today at our fiscal year budget hearing. I apologize for reading, but I have a few things that it would be better if I just read it. Sorry. As I sat for weeks preparing for this budget hearing, reviewing correspondence received in the office from parties affiliated with the day-to-day operations of the CRB, I'm wondering if history is about to repeat itself. We acknowledged the CRB's 30th year of existence last week, attempting to provide accountability and transparency to the community related to members of the Syracuse Police Department. This has not been an easy task over the years, and by the looks of correspondence received over the last 2 months, and especially this week, it will continue to be an uphill battle internally and externally. I want to thank Ruthie Angrab for presenting the CRB with a mayoral proclamation on Palm Sunday at Hops Church, declaring April 2nd through the 6th CRB week of 2023. I personally want to thank President Hudson and Councilor Caldwell for their attendance for the entirety of Councilor Anderson's reenactment speech related to the initial legislation in 1993 on our rally at the City Hall steps on April 5th. I also want to thank Deputy Mayor Owens for presenting Councilor Anderson with a mayoral proclamation, honoring him at the conclusion of that speech, declaring April 5th Charles Anderson Day in the city of Syracuse. I would be remiss if I also didn't acknowledge New York State Senator Rachel May for her proclamation related to CRB, and the other elected officials participated in our activities, Onondaga County Legislator Linda Irving and Assemblywoman Pamela Hunter. An adequate budget is one of the many factors that will determine if we are able to fulfill our mission. We have requested case management software that provides an interface for the community to track status of their complaints and provide a simpler method for the board to review case materials prior to our monthly executive sessions. We are also requesting additional office staff to assist with investigation, community engagement, and a policy analysis. We look forward to the move later this year, which will provide additional office space we need for all of our staff to be in the same office space, for us to once again have our own conference room. The needs of the community have grown in the last 30 years. The needs of our office have as well. For staff resources, for security-related concerns, I'm seeking additional funding not previously allocated for independent security as well in the amount of $5,000 to $10,000. I've compared the staff salary and budget of a few different CRBs in close proximity to us, Albany, Buffalo, and Rochester. I'll provide these slides to you as additional supporting documents to everyone for consideration. We all agree that every level of government has its checks and balances, and the police department is no different. The CRB aims to provide the necessary accountability and build trust between the community and members of the Syracuse Police Department. We hope to continue to speak truth to power without the concern of retaliation. SPD has more than 10 officers assigned to community engagement. We currently have 1. This is inadequate. Our community outreach indicates that much of our community is unaware of the availability of the CRB and its ability to provide them with information to assist in the understanding of policies and procedures of SPD. When I am the only primary investigator of complaints and I focus on community engagement and policy and training recommendation, report writing, and board education and training, additional tasks within my job description cannot be completed, such as submission of accounts payable documents, responses to FOIL and litigation discovery demands, and responding to other correspondence timely, appropriately, and without delay. We have asked for 1% of the police budget last year, which is on par with all of our peer communities previously mentioned, and we are again seeking the additional funding for the upcoming year. This will provide an additional $200,000 to our budget, which will enable us to adequately investigate grievances against SPD officers that are filed with our office. This dollar amount is considerably less than the dollar amount the city has spent to settle use of force litigation and other civil litigation against SPD officers in recent years. Thank you so much for your time.
Questions? Okay, so Ray, you mentioned that there's 10 SPD that are supposed to be in the community engagement, and we only got one.
Yes, so SPD has community engagement officers that are assigned to do work in the community, and they have more than 10 officers that are assigned in that role. We currently have Anthony Hurd as our community engagement person, so we were asking for an additional person as office staff to complete more community engagement. We've been doing some listening sessions throughout the community since Anthony has been on board, and in those conversations we have heard that people are not aware that we still exist, and they also, do still have concerns as to policies and procedures related to the CRB, related to SPD. So in order for us to have more staff to do that, we are seeking an additional position. We were advised that all new position requests and other requests had all been denied, so that's why you don't see them listed on any other documentation that is before you.
Denied by SPD?
No, denied by the mayor's office. So they aren't listed, so that's why that's why I'm stating most of it to you at this time.
I do have one question on that. So you mentioned, I think on the page before last, you kind of ran off some of your duties. You said reporting, community engagement, and investigating. So you also do community engagement along with Anthony, and you want to hire another person, so you'll have 3 people doing community engagement?
So when training Anthony in terms of understanding his tasks and roles, I've had to spend time doing that. When we were preparing for the 30th acknowledgement ceremony, that took away from time that could have been spent doing that. So as we continue to complete the training and also just looking at what else we can be doing in the community in terms of engagement, it is necessary to have another staff, because when I'm outside of the office doing that, nothing in the office in terms of day-to-day operations is getting done.
So then only those 2 would do the community engagement, and then you would kind of fall off and go in the back office?
Yes,
so to speak.
Yes, and continue to do the primary investigating, report writing, and things of that nature, and any other stuff, because I pretty much have to do when we have litigation matters or someone provides a FOIL request, I have to review all that stuff and help the other additional office staff, our data analysis currently, to help them get those documents together. So then it keeps us in that sense.
So what does your community engagement look like now, as far as how do you do the outreach, and how do you want to see it grow, and where?
So currently we have scheduled outreach in the Boys and Girls Clubs. We have also scheduled outreach in, we want to schedule them in schools. We have done stuff with Parks and Rec, but in order for us to be able to, one, have enough staff to do it in schools on a timely manner, have community engagement other than us participating in events that are already happening in the community, and say if we wanted to host an event, we would need additional staff to be able to do that. So those are the things that we are looking at doing in order to make sure people start to see the CRB as the host of an event, instead of just expecting them to come up to us at a table that is set up by another agency and we're just one of the people at a table. Typically, we don't get many people coming up to our table because it's almost taboo for them to be seen, because they think that, somebody will think that I have an issue with the police, and that provides them with fear. So we don't get a lot of complaints based upon tabling. We get more events based upon walking around and doing foot stuff. That's what gets people to know more about us.
What's the footstep stuff like?
So in terms of if we are at a community event and we are walking around, or we just pop in, to a barbershop, or we pop in to a community center and just ask to speak to people. That's how we get more people to know. If we schedule specific things related to the CRB, that's the footwork, but we have to do that in office to do that. So if we are scheduling those kind of things, that takes away from different stuff if I don't have the necessary office staff to do it. Because then I've made the connections in the community. Now I have to hand those connections off and make them feel comfortable with Anthony coming or the other community engagement person, so we have to still stay engaged.
So, I'm sorry, Counselor. So your wish is to have additional person to Anthony?
Yes.
At least to have 2 to be able to do that community?
Yes.
But you're only asking for 5,000 more?
No, so the $5,000 to $10,000 was,
Can I
yes.
jump in there? Because I think all of us, there was a letter that was sent to all of the counselors from Raynette. And I have to agree on that because we're in positions, especially CRB, that where you have a community, part of the community is on board, but then part of the community is not. So to send threatening letters to the CRB administrator, I think that there should be some type of security for her. That's what that 5,000 is for.
5,000 security.
For CRB.
Right, so what's the community engagement? Yeah.
So the community,
That explain the security thing, because we get threatening letters all the time and all kinds of security guards. So I
Right,
need an explanation on that.
okay, so a community engagement specialist, currently the salary ranges between $47,000 to $55,000. So that would be the amount that we're looking for in terms of community engagement. Yes, it's the same salary that is on here right now.
But that's zeroed out. So are you upgrading it to 18E?
No, so that's me. I'm the program person. This is a community engagement specialist, so that's 48 to 57.
But you want to add an additional?
Correct.
Okay.
But it's not listed on there because, again, they didn't list any of the new positions that I asked for because,
I see.
so they're not listed.
The signal program coordinator, it's
No, so there was a change in my salary grade from 16E to 18, and that's the difference. So that's why there's one that says 0 and one that says 1, because moving forward, it is going to just be that one me, but not at that salary range.
Higher grade. Yep, the grade changed.
In terms of security, we have a couple of community members that have been so frustrated with the issues related to their interactions with Syracuse Police Department that they have then began to threaten the CRB. To the point where we have had to issue trespass orders as it relates to that. And then most recently, because the way that the building is set up, if these individuals come in, which we have, some individuals have known to come in armed prior to our current security measures, but then they just leave them in the plants outside in front of the building. So then they retrieve them after. So then I have to have a concern when I leave out of the building whether or not they're waiting for me. And I've had some to wait for me over the years. So with that being said, and us providing the no trespass orders for these individuals and them continuing to trespass and continuing to come. And then the most recent letter that I received addressed directly to me, it has began to cause an additional pause and concern. So that is the reason why we're asking for this additional security, because one, if we don't have this security, we are asking members of the Syracuse Police Department to come and be our security, and how does that in turn look to the community when they're coming in here to file a complaint? And then what happens is that officer that is there then gets a complaint filed against them. So now we have the ripple effect happening, and now I have this person filing that. So then in order to kind of alleviate those concerns, this is the reason why we're looking to hire an independent security agency in order to provide that, opposed to a member of the Syracuse Police Department.
So they would just be in your office?
That is ideally in our office, and then at outreach events when we have particular outreach events to ensure that we are.
So this would be on a contract basis, only when you need them, though?
Yes.
So they wouldn't be there Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 or whatever your work schedule is?
So based upon what I've been able to receive, they do have an hourly rate. And if we have them unarmed, it's $60 an hour. If we have, it's $50 an hour for unarmed, and it's $65 an hour for armed. And so they would be available when, in fact, we know that there is a concern. If we start to have these repeated situations again, and we know, then I can't say it won't be Monday through Friday. It could be. I just want to have the adequate budget in order to make sure that I'm not coming after the situation or after we have a situation and saying, hey, can I now get security because another situation happened. Between $5,000 and $10,000, I was trying to be amicable in terms of, but when we look at the rate that they're giving, it could be either 50 to 65, and those also security measures would be in place at the time that we have public board meetings. We've had, situations in the past where we've had people that have been, in need of some extra measures as well.
I guess, Ray, first of all, Ray, as somebody, Madam President, myself, I think, was it a year and a half ago that we received those letters to our homes as well? So we do sympathize with you because it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Here we are trying to do our best to serve the community, but at the same time, you have to. Here's what you are met with. It's unfortunate. I guess what I'm trying to say in that if it gets to that level where a person who's seeking services from CRB become a threat to CRB, isn't that better handled by the police than, because at that point that person is danger, and if it is to that level, wouldn't that qualify for police services?
So then the same person who has already come to our office seeking redress as it relates to their interaction with Syracuse Police Department is going to then come to our office and be met with another Syracuse Police Department officer, and then if that person asks them to be escorted out of the building, they are then going to file a complaint and talk about how now this officer is now just like the other officer, and we're going to have a revolving door because we've had this occur in the past. Yeah. So in terms, then we're kind of creating another situation between the two departments again, where we're going to have officers who are going to be, reluctant in providing assistance because now they're going to be investigated. So I understand exactly what you're saying, but in turn, this is the same entity that they've already expressed concerns about, and that we are utilizing them again, and it could create even more agita as it relates, and to me, it presents a conflict. But
I think it creates a conflict either way, because if you have an unarmed security officer, the next escalation is SPD, so they're coming regardless. Like if the person comes in there irate, an unarmed security officer won't be able to do anything, especially in our public spaces. Like if you're having a meeting in here, we're going to choose our security over this independent contractor.
so in terms of that, if they are then escorted out of the building and SPD then meets them outside of the building, that's another situation than having an SPD officer stand near our door or be patrolling our office, because then we have to look at what SPD officer is the police department going to be able to assign to the CRB for those security related issues. Are they going to be willing to assign an officer to the CRB for those particular issues, when in the past the conversation has been had. When we assist you, then we are getting complaints. And now we're spending our time investigating this complaint. So I can see it both ways, and I understand that it's not the best option at all. You know what I mean? But when you look at it logistic-wise, it's an option. And it's an option that I would like you to consider.
So logistically, though, in a city building, can an armed security guard come through our detector and keep its gun? Or does it have to give it up? I don't know what the rules are here. Because if
There
you have-
doesn't seem to be any rules. President Hudson and I talked about this, and Councilor Majuk. It's pathetic, our security here. If you go over to the county chambers, county legislative chambers, they do everything to you before you can get in that
Yeah.
building. And they're
Courthouse,
manned by sheriffs.
And I want to
You know.
piggyback on top of Councilor Hogan, because yesterday we had a situation out front.
Yes, we did.
And this guy was out of his mind. So I've actually had a conversation with the deputy mayor, and we are actually looking at getting armed security. Because nobody should be put in danger doing their job.
Right, right. And I think that would be a neutral party, not police department, but armed security that is vetted to protect everybody in our city buildings.
I would personally prefer if we had a police officer getting into, you'd have to go by a police officer to get in this building.
I had a conversation about that yesterday.
Yeah.
And what was said is, because the officers' levels are so low, that we really need them on the streets, not in the building.
That's, President Hudson, you're absolutely right, and I probably could have come up with that argument if you, we know that that's the typical argument, but when we're conducting meetings, it can get sort of rambunctious sometimes. I really think we should have a police officer at least on that door all the time, and maybe to protect Renette too. I agree with Councilor Allen, is that I think you need somebody who can, actually arrest somebody. Somebody who's that upset that comes to you and says it has to be escorted out of the building. I think it should be escorted by a policeman.
I think, I'll piggyback off Councilor Hogan. I think the revolving door of complaints, you may never stop that, right? We're living in a time that it's so polarized that those complaints are going to revolve. Whatever keeps you safest is the best answer. Like if it is an armed police officer at the door and that causes another complaint to come in, but that's the safest way to keep you from being shot or hurt, I'm for the safest thing for you.
So I'm going to say, Renette, before you speak, I have to sort of disagree with my fellow councilors. If we're looking at CRB, right, and if you were an individual coming in from the city, right, community, and you have a complaint on the police, then you meet a police officer, you're already up arms, so you're walking in front of that, right? So it's like, it's major conflict. I'm not, just look at if a person was coming to just make a formal complaint about something, and then they're coming, now they don't know if they trust you or not, right? Because you're walking into it, right? So I disagree with that, but what I'm gonna say is this: safety is first, period. So you being protected and feeling all right about yourself is important. And that means, I don't care about none of the other stuff. That's important. Lives matter more than anything. So making sure that you're feeling safe and whatever you need is important. And I'm going to say, me, Rashida, speaking this, but I totally disagree of having an actual officer there, because I think it'll look conflicting, right, at that state, because what they're standing for, right? I think it could make whoever's coming to make a complaint feel unease, whatever the situation is, but your safety is number one. So coming to a ground to make sure what is best is something that we have to come up with. But
And what are the best practices for this, other CRBs in New York State? Do they have security, and if so, what does it look like?
I'm not sure. I haven't been able to look and see if they have security. I mean, they all have, different safety protocols in place in terms of, metal detectors and things of that nature in particular offices and things of that nature. We've had people who, again, have been on the no trespass still enter our building. So therefore, like I've done, I've done everything that I'm supposed to be, and that is served on a person by a member of the Syracuse Police Department to let them know that they are not able to come into our building, and yet they still came. And this
That
occurred.
A private security officer wouldn't be able to do anything about that.
They wouldn't be able to stop them.
Only a police officer would be
But
able to.
what I'm going to say is that we spend a lot of time letting the public know that we don't work for the Syracuse Police Department. And trying to then have them be met at the door by a member of Syracuse Police Department when they're coming to file a complaint is gonna make it seem as if I'm lying.
Yeah.
We spend more time convincing them it's okay to come to our office to do this.
Renat, with the move to Park Place, have they discussed with you what the security will look like at the front door when they go into that building?
They say they're going to have additional, they're going to have another security staff that's going to be right there near the office. And if I don't feel comfortable with the person coming into our office, then there's a room that's on the side over here in which that security person can be in, can see what's going on, and I guess I just have to signal, if something is seeming a little suspicious or ready to occur. But again, I spend so much time letting them know, the community, that I don't work for the Syracuse Police Department, and we are for the community and not, payrolled by them, that it's just going to make it appear as if I'm lying.
So do we outsource to the sheriff
Renat, the
department?
person who sent you that letter,
The police.
that person was not from the community. That person was a threatening person from outside the community. I would guarantee that. I would worry more about people that you haven't dealt with.
Well,
That's just my
And
opinion.
that's kind of the
I'm concerned on all levels because people may not present their mental instability until they're in the office. They may call several times, which we had several telephone calls prior to this point. Then they decide that they show up. So it's a combination of things going on.
Safety first.
I mean, I'm just trying to make sure that we can continue to do our mission the best way possible without re-injuring and messing up the relationship that we've already built, and then hindering a relationship that we may build in the future if we don't do something in terms of making sure everybody feels safe.
And I think it's broad, for me, it's broader. That building that we're moving into, or any building, it's not just the CRB in that building. We're moving a bunch of other offices. People snap for a lot of reasons. It's not just the CRB. People can snap because they don't like what the codes department has done to them. People can go and, in a country that has more guns than people, go and shoot somebody because they're black or gay or they disagree with them. So we're in a time where there's a lot of gun violence, right? So it's not just the CRB, it's the whole building.
that's why we all should be protected.
That's exactly right.
Everybody, safety
The time
first.
we're in right now,
And then if we think about the mayor's office and the police department have been discussing alternative responses to interactions. They're trying to figure out ways in which they are utilizing other services other than the police to respond when we know somebody's having a mental health issue. Many of these times, this is clear signs that somebody's having a mental health issue as it relates to that. So if we are already saying, hey, there needs to be an alternative response for them, then why are we going to say at this point in time, when we know that evidently that's the same issue, that the police standing in front of the CRB door is the answer?
So, as you, Ray, as I take from what you're presenting, that when these individuals that are perceived to be a threat come to you, that it is something anticipated, is it?
Not necessarily. I didn't anticipate what happened last week.
No, when they come to see you, you will
Right.
anticipate that this individual present a threat?
We can, based upon previous things, if they call first. Like if they call and say that they're coming, but that doesn't necessarily happen. People don't always call and say, I'm coming at 4 o'clock today.
So, and I'm asking that question because you said that the services of the security guard would be requested based on certain time frame.
Right, if I'm in the room and I'm letting them know by some sort of signal that says, hey, this is turning left, then they're gonna come in and be with me.
So, and I'm saying that, Ray, because 5,000, you know, is if you're gonna do that, it's not a lot, right?
Not
Right.
enough.
And I'm saying that because if for you to utilize 5,000 based on the need base, right? It would mean that there's certain level of anticipation and planning that goes into when these services will be needed. For example,
Right.
if you have a meeting and this person is coming, you will understand that there is a perception that this person is a threat. Therefore, we need a security guard here at that time.
Right.
Right? So that's what I'm saying. Would you be at least have a sense and a knowledge that
No.
there's a threat?
How you gonna
Not
do that?
necessarily.
Yeah, like,
Right. So
I think we need to reevaluate
And-
what she's asking.
let me finish.
Yeah, because that
Let me
ain't.
finish.
I just said a range.
If that's the case, right? Because 5,000, you are saying it's going to be a need base.
No, I was saying there was a range between $5,000 to $10,000 that I was asking for. I didn't want to, you know what I mean? I didn't want to say, oh, I need $25,000. You know, and then you say, well, how about 10? You know, and I'm going to accept whatever you give, but I don't really know. But if you're looking at a range at unarmed is $60, is $50 an hour, and armed is $65. If they do, you know what I mean? I just don't know. And then I would be asking you again, maybe later, what else to do. But I can't anticipate how much I will need, and that's why I gave a range of $5,000 to $10,000 just as a amount.
Right now,
This is also bigger than the office. This is not just for your
Yeah.
storefront. It's for when you go out to events and places in the community as well. And then you would have to, at that point, determine when do you want an armed person or not.
Right, and so it would be on an as-needed basis, right?
Is that right?
and I think, Raina, I mean, I gotta first apologize for you having to like defend, because this is just across the country with everything going on. It's heightened. Like, everyone should be like honest. This should be one of our first conversations appeared across this council, yours, and everyone, right, with safety. What I'm hearing is, like Rita said, is that you gotta come up with like exactly like sort of more of a plan, because yes, you do need some support, and you do need safety. Safety is number one. We just gotta come up like how you need it, how many hours, what budget you think, because $10, $5,000 not gonna be enough. So yeah, almost.
That's where
you
I was
know,
going, Council.
and maybe looking at that, because we never want you to feel like your safety is not number one, because it is, and all your staff. It is important to feel safe, and the role that you play, it's hard. You like this. You know, you're trying to help the community out, as well as, you know, hearing both sides of the story. So it can be, you know, like you said, half of the community might like you, half doesn't. So, and I get how you might not want a police officer there, because I could imagine, right? But you also don't want to cause conflict with the police department, because you're trying to build relationships. So saying this is, maybe there's something we can have, like, you know, I'm not sure, committee me something to figure out what we could do to help her, because
Let me ask you this question, Renette. So when you're, what are your exact office hours?
So I usually arrive between 8:30 and 4:30, sometimes 9, depending on if I have a meeting before time. My office staff comes in from 9 to 5. Community engagement is typically in the evening, anywhere, sometimes can start in the middle, could start about 3 o'clock and could last until like 7 o'clock at night, just depending, because when we did some outreach at McChesney, we were done at about 7:30.
So what I'm trying to get at is, when you're in your office, there's a certain span that there's no one coming in?
No, people can come in on, they can walk into the office at any time. There's really not a span in which people can't come in. If we are not in the office and we're at a community engagement event, then they are going to see a sign on the door and it's going to tell them where we're at, if all of us are out. If not, then we have staff that's out there, and then somebody is still in the office.
Lori?
Thank you. Lauren Nilsson, Vice Chair of the CRB. To Councilor Hogan's point, I think this is a discussion that's larger than us sitting here talking about CRB needs. Fortunately or unfortunately, the people that are security here and at Commons know who I am, so when I come in, they let me in. I don't know that that's the case with everyone, but I have seen people come in and just say, I'm going to the CRB, and they go. We do have certain people who we know are going to be an issue when they come, and the security folks know those people also. And they will call Renette and say so-and-so is here. But once they're on that elevator, they have full access to that building, just like here or any other building that we have. So I think we've got a prime opportunity, being that we're moving in July, hopefully July, to make sure that whatever security is needed for that building is provided, whether it's the sheriff, the police department, or a private company. You know, the other events, people are referring to the letter. Yes, the letter was disturbing, but Renette was almost assaulted and had a person arrested last week who just came to the building and threatened her with an umbrella, which, may sound funny, but it's not when someone's standing there trying to kill you with an umbrella. So, there's a lot of stuff going on that I think maybe, whether it's the Public Safety Committee or a group from the Public Safety Committee, sit and see what the needs are for that new building and City Hall and see what's going on. Because you're right, the county, you can't get in that county building.
Thanks, Lori. Other questions?
The one last statement I would say is that even when we are providing the names and pictures of people that are on the list, they've still come to our office. So I'll just put that out there. Even when they're there and we have a trespass order attached to the back of their picture, they've still come to our office and become attached to not only myself, but other people in the office. And last week was something I never want to experience again at all whatsoever. And the only reason why this person wasn't just given an appearance ticket was because they already had outstanding warrants. And that's the only reason why it kept them from being able to come back that same very day later on, because they had done that before. Even with me reiterating the fact that they cannot come into the building without calling our office and making an appointment. I did that for 3 days straight before this incident happened outside of City Hall Commons.
Renette, so a gentleman, I imagine a gentleman, was it a man or woman? A woman who has outstanding warrants comes up and threatens you. You called the police, right?
So I did not. So what happened was we were outside the building, and it was before I was able to enter the building. This person was coming out of the building and then saw me, and then they proceeded to, speak what they needed to speak, and then I stood in between the guardrail and the sidewalk, and they proceeded to take an umbrella and tell me how they got me. I got you with an umbrella 2 times, where the security officers came out of the building and were standing in between us, and she continued to come up into my face closer and closer while outside the building. But the problem was she was already in the building. So had I gone into the building, I could have been met with her anyways, and which has happened with my other office staff previously.
So
But they weren't aware.
You didn't call the police?
The police were called by the CSOs, and then they found her around the corner as she was proceeding to come back to the building and continued to be a threat. And that's when they asked me what her name was. I gave them her name. They looked it up. And even in the presence of the police, she continued to make, derogatory comments and do all types of stuff while being arrested. That's,
So she was arrested?
she was.
Okay.
Other question related to
I
budget?
figure out something.
I just want to say this, right? And I do hear where Renette is going with this, because I was in a meeting a couple years ago downstairs, right? And so when I came out the door, security met me. Her eyes was this big. She said some lady came in the building, and I don't know how they allowed her to wander through 3 offices, because they went to the common council office. And she basically said that she was gonna gouge my eyes out because I owed her money. I don't even know who this lady was. They got a picture of her, but guess what? Nothing's ever happened. So we have to err on the side of caution.
Sure do. Safety first.
We have to.
So with all of this, we will have a deeper conversation on this, but I think, you know, when you look at how the county is operating versus how we operate, it's totally different. And I think the safety of the city staff, city employees need to be really scrutinized.
Absolutely.
And really brought to forefront.
Facts.
And Renat, you, I'm sorry for what happened to you. It's like I said earlier, it has happened to a number of us. Not to the extent where a person is like,
Unacceptable.
you know, in your face, but you know, it's a concern. It's a concern for the entire building here, and the next building we're gonna get. And I think that before we do that, we need to have conversation around that as to how we handle that.
Absolutely.
And I will say that the reason why this person was also not supposed to come upstairs was because previously she had scared the suite mates in the area, to which that made me have to then make sure that they felt safe because of her behavior previously, which this all started in 2019. So you're telling me this is not as if it's just now come to a head, and every time we're escalating.
Safety.
And I want people to be able to, so on one hand, I risked my safety because I wanted this person to still be able to file a complaint. I wanted them to still be able, because we all know, even though people have mental health issues, there still could be a portion of truth as to their interaction with the police. So I still never want anybody to not feel able to come into our office. So I put myself in harm's way to a certain extent. You know, well, I did on several occasions by still allowing them to come because they still had concerns.
Ray, is there a way with people like that, who are that threatening, is there an electronic way for them to file a complaint at all? Or
There is an electronic way, but for them to have the capacity to do so is one thing. And they won't have the capacity to file something online. We are able to file complaints through our website. We are able to have people mail complaints in. We do a variety of things in order for people, if they can't make it to our building, but when they do, we have to be ready.
And if you're angry, you don't want to be behind the computer.
That's what I'm saying. Do something.
They're coming. They're coming.
Raymond, I'm gonna ask you one question about what's here. And bringing it back to the budget. In your complaints filed, so you have somewhere around 100 complaints filed. The panel hearing and the public board hearings, are those independent from each other, or is it a process where from 150 maybe to the panels and the of those?
Yeah, so there's a process. So in terms of the number of complaints that are filed in a year, not every complaint comes. The board decides to have a hearing on it, but it doesn't mean that we don't process the complaint. So when you look at public board meetings are just our monthly meetings. And then panel hearings are the hearings that are held by a board panel. And I will be remiss if I didn't mention in 2021, I went out on maternity and didn't come back for 12 weeks. So therefore, we are still catching up from the time I went out in November to the time I returned in February of 2022. We did have some investigations being conducted by Freeland Investigation Services, but there were day-to-day operations that were not being completed while I was out.
Renat, what else did you ask for in this budget that you didn't get?
I asked for the software as it relates to civil, and I'll pass this information around, but they have a, that's the forward-facing dashboard that allows complainants to look on the computer and see where their complaint is in the process. You know, is it still in initial steps, or is it being investigated, so on and so forth, and it allows the board access. There is a basic amount for that software that is $8,085 per year. And there's a one-time fee of $12,000. And I'll pass this, there's enough here for everybody to have. So I asked for that software, and that was denied. I also asked for a community engagement person, and I also asked for a investigator, which I ask for every year, and a policy analysis. And those salary ranges would be consistent with the salary ranges for the community engagement specialist and the data analysis as a backdrop.
Have you talked to API about a dashboard? Because they've done that for ARPA and other things in the city.
So based upon the needs of the CRB, I could not utilize the same dashboard as they would be utilizing, because our complaints would need to be inside that, and we keep that confidential. So how could I use API to manage that dashboard when we would need to make sure that that confidential information maintains confidential?
So you asked them if it's able to be done, and they said no because of the confidentiality.
No, I didn't, because many oversight agencies across the country have been looking at civil, and that is the software that they are utilizing as it relates to that. So I didn't ask for API because of the confidentiality nature of it. I'm not sure who works in API, and giving them access to complaints filed by citizens against members of the police department just wouldn't make sense.
But I don't know if that's something they can set up for you. They can come in-house to your office, set it all up, and then you just maintain it.
No.
Okay.
I just wanted to speak about the software. I know it sounds expensive, but I've had the opportunity to go to the police department and see some of the things that they use to investigate, and we should be ashamed of what we're using versus what they're using. We try as a board, we review body-worn camera footage. It's like watching the Blair Witch Project. When we try and do it on a laptop, we don't have access to the same software and even the same equipment as far as the viewing equipment goes that SPD does. And we were invited to go over there and watch some body-worn camera footage during a joint kind of like we were trying to prevent a complaint, let's put it that way. And I thought it was like watching a movie in the movie theater, you know, and the difference between how we view the footage that we get versus how the police department does, it makes a world of difference in our investigations. It's one of the biggest things that happens when we have executive session and we review cases is we couldn't watch the footage, couldn't open Dropbox, I mean, there's a million things that this software would help the board members do in order to determine whether a case went to a hearing or not.
And I want to thank the CRB, because basically, let's be perfectly honest here. We have 2 paid people and everybody else is volunteering. So I mean, for the safety of the volunteers that's sitting in this room, I think that we should move everything that we need to do to make them safe, because they're doing a civic duty that they really don't have to do.
That's a fact. So the only thing I would say is that the administrator is full-time, our data analysis full-time, and community engagement person is full-time. We were able to have a community engagement fellow recently this year because we were not able to fulfill our legal secretary position, which still remains open based on our inability to hire someone based upon the salary. We have 2 Syracuse University political science interns that we have been using, and we have 1 upstate public health program person. We continue to try to make do with the volunteers that we have, which when we have all 11, that is a lot to manage in terms of their schedules, organizing their schedules along with the police department schedules when we're trying to conduct hearings. So there's a lot of factors that go into, and not having the adequate staff is doing our community a disservice after being around for 30 years.
So from 100 complaints, give and take, how many of those really make it to hearing?
So less than 20% make it to hearing because we are able to see body-worn camera footage now, and that helps. But as Lori pointed out, if we have board members that are volunteers and they don't have computers, we have to have an adequate space in order for them to come in and watch that body-worn camera footage, in order for them to be an informed board member at the time that they make a decision. And so we have requested, as part of the move, to have a TV inside our conference area, which we used to have a conference area, and then that was taken over by the Board of Adjudication, and then also MBD. And so now we don't have one, so now we utilize one in the permits department. But this will give us the ability to watch body-worn camera on a big screen for the board members, so that we can have that during meetings, during people can come in, and also during hearings. So we're just trying to move into the 21st century as it relates to reaffirming and reimagining police oversight and looking at all the factors it takes to move a department from 1993 to 2023.
Other questions?
Yes, that was the only time that I was able to get, so that you could have a range at something at this point in time. I know the protocol is to have at least 3, so I'll reach out to 2 other places to get them, but at least I was able to, I tried to come up with something that you at least would have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, I want to thank the members of CRB, Raynette, and the board members. Thank you so much. Do you want to say something? You good? Yeah, you're right. Okay, so.
I think you better let him sit over there.
So, Lori did a great job. We should have had Lori sit next to Raynette, but she did great. That will be all. WCNY, that will conclude our budget hearing for CRB.